Flight cancellations mounted earlier today as an Arctic cold front spans from central Texas to the East Coast this week.
Oh yeah, more than 1,200 U.S. flights were canceled around 11 a.m. Eastern time today, with more than 1,800 more delayed. American Airlines saw the most cancellations, scrapping around 421 flights, or about 14% of its schedule. Now, according to the National Weather Service advisory, wind advisories were in effect in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and other states across the Midwest and Plains until this morning, with wind chills dropping to 30 degrees below zero in some places. My gosh. While the Department of Transportation requires airlines to issue refunds to travelers whose flights are canceled, airlines also began issuing waivers as the winter weather has rolled in.
Staying with travel issues for a moment, an entire high school basketball team from Seattle, Washington, ended up stranded in Las Vegas for 5 days over Christmas after Southwest Airlines canceled their flight and left them scrambling to get home, spending thousands of dollars and eventually driving 18 hours on a bus through the snow. U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg has said airlines were required to issue refunds, quotes, within 7 business days if a passenger paid by credit card and within 20 days if a passenger paid by cash, check, or other means. He also called on them to cover ground transportation, hotels, and meals for stranded passengers. As of Friday, the team had been partially refunded for the canceled flights, but was still waiting on the full amount.
Well, let's get them their money. There's a new survey, speaking of money, that found that nearly 2/3 of Americans report living paycheck to paycheck, which is an increase from last year. Another report found that the number is about $9.3 million more than the previous year and includes about 8 million people making more than $100,000 per year. Now, the research also found that 4 out of 5 consumers expect their personal finances to improve the next year, which is up 7 percent points from July 22. About 1/3 think that their personal finances will stay the same, and 27% believe their situations will get worse. About 75% of those who think their finances will worsen said inflation was the top reason, and about 1/3 cited economic uncertainty. And, I think everybody has, if not, presently has had situations where you're living, paycheck to paycheck. I've been in the broadcast industry for just about 30 years. And sometimes that can be volatile. You sign a contract, they don't want to renew you. You're looking for a job. You're in, you're traveling and moving from city to city. So I have definitely, felt it. I'm thanking God that I'm in a situation now where it's pretty stable and you get married to somebody who, does well. That helps a lot. But seriously, though, that is the reality of a lot of Americans. And I've heard, this thing, this situation, this circumstance be addressed from, election to election. And I just don't know, from the promises and the policies, I just don't know if people, are feeling any better about their situation or if their situation is getting better. It is just difficult to save. With everyday, life, you've got groceries, you've got child care, you've got transportation. It is tough to really put something away.
I think the constant fight with inflation has really thrown a lot of people for a loop, and I think a lot of folks weren't expecting home prices and the price of goods and services, to go up so dramatically, so quickly. Yeah. And so I think that's part of what we're having to contend with. Also, I remember, before the 2020 election, I think there was a study that came out that showed that there was a large number of Americans that were like $400 away, from a major financial situation. That's right. And so that was, just a few years ago, right before the 2020 election. And so you've got to believe that those folks are being impacted by the current financial challenges that not just our country is experiencing, but folks around the world. Inflation doesn't just affect Americans, it affects people all over the world. And believe it or not, we've actually managed inflation a lot better than a lot of our foreign countries around the world. And so, that's no relief to people that are struggling to make ends meet now. But really, it's about connecting folks to economic opportunity. It's about financial literacy, and it's about, our elected leaders doing everything they can to get this inflation under control eventually.
Agree.
Well, moving along, speaking of federal officials, a federal judge has ruled against black firefighters who sued Jacksonville for grooming standards that could help them manage a common skin problem. They've lost their case. U.S. Senior District Judge Harvey Schlesinger wrote, quotes, "At issue is whether the city discriminated against plaintiffs when it required firefighters with PFB, which primarily affects African American men, to be clean shaven." In a 17-page order reviewing the case, the judge concluded that the plaintiffs were asking for something that would violate rules of the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration. 30 firefighters initially sued, saying they should be allowed to have close trimmed beards that would be close enough to avoid skin inflammation but wouldn't harm the fit of oxygen masks their jobs require in emergency settings.
And the Biden administration is now winding down the treatment of COVID-19 as an emergency restructuring and how the federal government will respond to the pandemic that is entering its fourth year. The administration plans to end both the national emergency and the public health emergency on May 11th. The announcement came in a message to Congress about measures House Republicans are considering this week to end those emergency declarations immediately. In a massive spending bill passed back in December, Democrats and Republicans agreed to allow states to kick people off Medicaid beginning in May. When the public health emergency ends, people without insurance will have to pay for vaccines, tests, and treatment on their own. Those with private insurance could have some out-of-pocket costs as well.
U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy believes 13-year-olds are just too early to join social media. Murthy believes this may result in adolescents having a, quote, distorted sense of who they are throughout critical development years, and he's not alone. According to the co-author of a UNC Chapel Hill study conducted on nearly 180 12-year-olds to determine how often they check social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat, checking behavior on social media in early adolescence may tune the brain's sensitivity to potential social rewards and punishments. Medical professionals are quite concerned about teenagers' use of social media because of studies that show a connection between social media and youth depression. And
staying with young folks for a moment now, according to a state audit released this week in Baton Rouge, black students are more than 5 times as likely to attend a D- or F- rated public school as are white students. Now, the report says A-rated schools have 65.9% white students and 20.3% black students. D- rated schools are 19.1% white students and 65.7% black students, and F- rated schools are 9% white students and 80.2% black children. Now, the review focused on trends in traditional public schools as well as private and charter schools, and we have our resident educator here with us, Dr. Nikortalai Corte. First of all, I was reading over this, and what is an F-? I thought once you got to an F, it couldn't get any worse than that. So what this tells me is those schools are in maybe complete disarray.
Well, I've never received one, nor have I given one to a student, an F-. I don't think I've ever given an F before, but this should be a call to action to elected officials and to leaders in Baton Rouge and across Louisiana. But let's be clear, what's happening in Louisiana is not just unique to them. We see examples of this in too many places across the country. And let's also not forget the connection between these failing schools. And I say failing schools because, it's adults. It's the system that's failing these kids. It's not just these students receiving an F. The F is a symptom of us, failing them. But not only is that the issue, but if we're sending kids to schools, if we're tracking black kids into schools that don't have the quality, that don't have the support and services that they need to succeed, what does that mean in terms of their economic mobility? What does it mean in terms of their job prospects. Chances are, they're going to end up being, a part of the group of folks that are finding it trouble to find and keep a job, a good job, the kind of job that's going to keep up with the high cost of living that so many people in our communities are experiencing right now.
And look, I believe it comes down to the dollar. And the districting and or the redistricting. You go to school over here, you go to school over there, and the only time there's some sort of kind of give is maybe when a black student can contribute to maybe the sports program. And just let's call a spade a spade. So I think it's down to the dollars. I think there is a huge lack of funding, and then also as a community, as a village, as parents, we also have to step up and demand better for our young people.
You're right.
Yeah. Coming up, an apology coming from one HBCU following a scholarship they recently offered a player.
Plus, the first black-owned McDonald's is back. We'll tell you all about them when we return. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report.